Psalm 121. We're in a new series simply entitled Help. Help. That's the title of the series. This is part one. There's 3 parts. And today we're talking about help me to be a good steward. Here's Psalm 121. Let's read the entire psalm. It says a song of ascents. Verse 1, I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber or sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. At times, I've been fascinated in my life by how much weight a single word can carry. Just one single word. And that's the case with this word, help. It's just 4 letters, and the weight that it can carry is amazing. It can carry the weight that is not really so urgent. I remember one of our daughters saying, Daddy, help me to tie my shoe. And so, it was not a sense of vital urgency. It wasn't a life or death situation, but it was important to her. So, I helped her to tie her shoe. That's not dangerous. Unless the child is about to descend a 100-foot staircase and their shoe is untied. Well, that can be different, but it's usually not urgent. But then help can be used with an exclamation point. And when it is, then there is this sense of urgency. It's a desperate cry. And isn't it fascinating how nothing else needs to be said other than help? And you know that it is a tone of its expression that helps us to determine the context of its utterance, help. It was recording artists John Lennon and Paul McCartney who wrote the words to a song entitled Help. Years ago, the group was called the Beatles. It's way ahead of some of your times, but the Beatles were something else. And so some of the words of the song were as follows. Help, I need somebody. Help, not just anybody. Help, I need someone's help. And actually, the cheering voices that heard them perform the song, they really didn't grasp the seriousness or the desperation that can be felt in the song. When you look at the words, they're looking at the group that they're in love in, and they're cheering, and girls are fainting and all of that over the Beatles singing their song, Help. But they sang and danced and never considered the words. Here are the rest of the words. So much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now, these days are gone. I'm not so self-assured. Now I've changed my mind and opened up the doors. Help me if you can. I'm feeling down. And I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please help me? It's a catchy tune. However, a closer look at the words, for me, reveal a desperate cry. And I don't know if Lennon and McCartney really meant to give it that sense, but when I'm looking for someone to ask for help, I see a song with a lyric of persons who are coming to grips with their anxiety, coming to grips with their human frailty, with their aging and anxiety. As a result, they come to ask for help. The psalmist in this psalm, in verse 1, considers his need for help, or hadn't you noticed that? It becomes clear that if you need help, if you want help, if you desire help, you need to ask for it. First, be brave enough to ask for help. It's not just the Beatles who found themselves crying out for help, but it's the psalmists here many years before they were even born. And in Psalm 121, more than once, in verse 1 and 2, the psalmist mentions help. And when he says, I lift up my eyes to the hills, we get the impression that he may have been thinking about actively being on a journey. And then he looks out to the hills and he says, help. Cynthia and I, our families, don't live in the Virginia area. When this church contacted me, I heard the message. They sent me paperwork, and I said, I ain't going to Virginia. That was my spiritual, prayerful answer. And I threw the paperwork aside. Later on, they contacted me again. The person who did that is no longer at this church. They moved to Texas, I believe. And they said, hey, aren't you going to fill out our paperwork? And I said, okay. And so I filled out the paperwork, sent it back, and they called again. I didn't really answer or respond. It's something that you're learning that about the guy who's now pastoring the church. And finally, the guy got in touch with me. He says, hey, we really would like to bring you here and interview you. How come you're not responding? And I said, I don't want to live in Virginia. I don't know those people there. And then finally we agreed to come, and we came to the church and saw all the wonderful people here, and discovered that, they needed help. And so here we are, 27 years later, we've been here. But all of our people, none of them live here. Cynthia's people live in the Chicago area. My people live in the Indiana and Wisconsin area. And so every year we go back with our 4 kids to visit family. And whenever we would go back to visit family with 4 young children at that time, it would be an adventure. It's a 12-hour drive without stopping. But we had to stop because children have small bladders. But what also happened is we learned over the years that even at my age, my bladder was smaller than theirs. We tried to make it an active trip. We had little tablets. Now they put the tablets in the back of the headrest and things like that so that we can endure the trip. But inevitably, there would be a time when all the kids would fall asleep. They did along the way. And then I look over at my beautiful bride, and she would have drifted off to sleep. And I would be driving, the only one awake, looking at the road ahead. And it would be sometimes at moments like that that I looked ahead and I began to think about God. And I began to think about His mercy, and I began to think about His grace. And it was moments like that that I found myself thinking about Him, and it is as if I was thinking like the psalmist. Lord, I need your help. I got this family and the kids in the back seat. I've got this wife next to me. I need your help. And perhaps the psalmist had made this journey many times. And during the long and arduous journey, he would look out at the landscape ahead of him. And that's when the thought came to him. Verse 1 in the text of Psalm 121, I lift up my eyes to the hills. But then he asked a question, from where does my help come? Secondly, be selective about where you look for help. Or haven't you thought about that? The psalmist needed a certain type of help, apparently. The psalmist did not look to his neighbor for help. Cynthia and I have some great neighbors. They happen to be members of this church. And when we came here and we were looking for a house, they saw us look at the house next door and they thought, we want them to live next to us. We just want the new pastor to be there. It's just so wonderful. We've been living there for 20-something years now, and they said, why did they move next to us? We don't know. So we have good neighbors. Sometimes you look to your neighbors for help, and they've been a big help to us, and hopefully we've been a help to them. The psalmist doesn't look to the relative. It doesn't say that in the text. The psalmist didn't look to the mother for help. He didn't look to the father. Sometimes fathers aren't there, but he doesn't look to them. Instead, the psalmist looked to the Lord. And this is significant because all of us face challenges. I know we like to come to church and we look pious and all of those things, but when you walk out of here, you walk back into facing the challenges of your life, because we all have them. We all have challenges. We all have things that we come up against. So many of us come to a place where we need to ask for help. However, our fear and our insecurity and our pride and even our egos can keep us from asking for help, because we think we've got it all together, or at least we want people to think that we don't need any help. And don't dismiss the fact that it is certainly right to call on certain persons for help. A family member, call on a family member, call on a friend, call on a religious leader. Not me, I'm too busy, but no, you can call on me. Depending on the help you need, call on a healthcare professional, call on a doctor, call on someone. But nevertheless, never dismiss this one vitally important thing. And it is this: whoever you call on, don't you ever forget to call upon the Lord, because he is the ultimate helper. Thirdly, be specific about what kind of help you need. Some people fear reaching out for help because, they may appear to be weak. They may appear to be the type of person who can't take care of themselves. So it's helpful for a helper to hear what kind of help you need. And it's helpful for them to have some idea of what kind of demons you are wrestling with. Find someone with whom you can divulge the help that you need, but be careful. You can't divulge the help you need to everybody. Some folks can't help but to talk and tell everything they know. That's just the reality. Oh, they'll say, "Oh, please tell me, I can listen. Hey, I want to hear. I'm there for you." And the minute it is out of your mouth and into their ears, they can't wait to get to somebody else and tell them about what you just said. Also, keep in mind that sometimes we don't even know exactly what kind of help we need. Have you ever been there? You've got a feeling, that something's going on, and you don't know exactly what kind of help to ask for. You just know that you need help. Ask for it anyway, but be sure not to abuse the need for help. As a pastor, I've seen that many times, where people are asking for help, and I need this, and they're sorrowful, and they're down, and their countenance is fallen. And really, the problem is not that they need help. It means that they need to stop being negligent. They need to stop allowing problems to occur as a result of the consequences of the things that they are doing, or the things that they are not doing that they should be doing. Fourth, be explicit about whom you ask for help. One source writes that there's a lot of good that can come from reaching out to others for assistance. There are some people who are just good helpers. I've met them before in my lives. You can talk to them. They just really know how to be sensitive and to talk to you and to be good listeners, which is a major part of it. For many years, I wasn't a good listener. I was too busy thinking about what I was going to say and how I was going to respond, not really listening to what the person was going to say. Today, I'm still probably not the best listener, but I've learned that if you're going to help somebody, you need to listen to what they have to say. Another source suggests a reason why some people won't ask for help is for the simple reason that they don't want to be beholden to anyone. Some of us have a lot of pride. We don't want to depend on anybody. We don't want to be beholden to anybody. And still others may have trust issues. And so they don't ask for help. Therefore, they dislike putting themselves in the hands of other people. Sometimes specificity escapes us. You may not know what kind of help you need. You just know that you need some help. However, you can know this, that the first one that you decide to call, come on, some of us have some good friends. Some of us have some great moms we can call upon, or dads. Some of us have some people that you can just talk to. And you just do. Thank God for that. That's amazing. That's wonderful to have a best friend. My best friend for 40 years has been my wife. She is just my best friend. That's how our relationship has been. It's just my best friend. She's the one I talk to. She's the one I share with. Some people are married, but their best friend is somebody else outside of that marriage. Okay, you may have a best friend. Be careful. You may have a best friend. But whoever you call upon, whoever you talk to, you need to make a priority to call upon the Lord. Especially if you say you believe in him. Especially if you say that you've given your heart and your life to him. The psalmist writes in verse 2 of 121st Psalm, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. So of all the things I said, it still ultimately comes down to whoever you are asking for help, one main person you need to be asking for help is the Lord. Because he can do things that nobody else can do. He can make things happen that nobody else can make happen. He can heal things that nobody else can heal. He can take you places that nobody else can take you. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And this is one of God's distinctions. He is the one who made. What about that? He says he made the heavens. Well, the heavens are still a mystery to us as we look up. We know that rockets have been up there. We know that satellites are up there. But there's still this mystery about the heavens when you look up and you see the stars twinkling. Cynthia was driving home the other night and she said, I saw a shooting star shoot by. That's a mystery. That's amazing. And the construction of the earth. There are things on the earth that we may not have even seen yet. Dig deep enough in the ground. There's some stuff crawling around down there that's like you may not even want to see. But then there is the sense that if he is the maker, if he's the one who made, he made you. Which means he knows you better than anyone. He knows you better than you know yourself. And certainly the residual effects of sin have impacted us. Yeah, we're sinners. That's impacted us. It's impacted our lifespan. It's impacted how we think. It's a deteriorating effect. Nevertheless, the solution and remedy are administered by the maker of heaven, earth, and you. There's a day and a time set when he's going to do away with the effects of sin. I love that part. There's going to be a time that there's no more sickness. That's enough for me. I want to go to the place where there's no more sickness. Show me 2 places. Well, this one has a little bit of sickness. This one has a little less. This one has no sickness. Guess which one I'm choosing? No more sorrow. If you're like me and Cynthia, you have had times in your life where you had to deal with some sorrow. There's some losses that you may have experienced or that you will experience. My grandfather was a preacher who stood up strong, and that man preached. He got saved and became a preacher in his 60s. And that man preached until he just fell dead. I miss him. And his wife, my grandmother, wonderful woman, tough. Came from a tough life for the years that they, lived through, the things that they went through. I miss her. My mother-in-law is just a real blessing that God gave me another person in my life, Cynthia's mother, who was just a phenomenal person. I miss her. There's all kinds of things that we deal with, that there's coming a time that we won't have to deal with those things anymore. But until that time comes, we need help. And the helper is the Lord to get us through the challenges of life. So call on a friend. Call on a relative. Call on a doctor. Call on a counselor. But whoever you call on, don't you forget to first call for help on the Lord. The fact is, whether they believe it or not, or accept it or not, everyone comes to a time in their life where they need help. I ran across this story in China. Dinge was walking his dog by the Sun Shui River. And as he walked by, he saw this family out in the water trying to rescue their little girl who had wandered out too far. And so he doesn't think about himself. He just jumps in to go to help that family. which he does. In fact, later on, two other people see what's going on and they jump in too to help that family. And Dinge helps to get that family back to shore. And as that mother and that father and that little girl get to shore, the current catches Dinge and it's dragging him out. And so the other two people who jump in and try to help him say to the family, the father, hey, come and help us to try to get him out of the water. And the family starts packing up and says, what does that have to do with us? And they leave. It was a little later on that they pulled Dinge's dead body out of the river. Family later apologized after they found out that he died, which apparently they thought made everything all right that they did. When people save lives, it's usually not because they want something, but it's because they're there to help. They don't want anything in return necessarily. However, if somebody saves your life, you ought to stick around and say thank you. Dinge wasn't granted that privilege when he helped save an entire family from drowning. And so the fact is, no matter how confident you feel, no matter how capable you think you are, no matter how educated you are, no matter how financially stable you are, here's something that you may not have realized: you need help. We all need help, not just so that we can be helped, but so that you won't walk away forgetting that you've just been helped by the Lord, and so that you can also help others, and thereby so you can be the good steward that God has called us to be. If you haven't forgotten, that's the main point of the message: being a good steward. So let me close by giving you 3 thoughts on stewardship. Number 1, be a good steward. Just be a good one. By defining the term, a steward can be a person who looks after other travelers, like the passengers on the ship or the passengers on an aircraft or the passengers on a train. Be a good steward. You're God's property. He's looking after you. And you in turn should be a steward over what God has placed in your possession. Be a good steward over yourself. Be a good steward over your family. And sometimes when the need is there, be a good steward over helping other brothers and sisters in Christ. Trust in the Lord and remind yourself of what he says in Psalm 121, verse 5, the Lord is your keeper. That gives me confidence. Because I know that throughout my life, there's been mistakes where I thought I could keep myself, I could take care of myself. I know what I'm doing. I'm confident. I'm educated. I have a position in a company that is a significant position. And then after all of that, come to the point of realizing I need the Lord. I need his help. I need him to keep me. Secondly, be a responsible steward. Another definition: a steward can refer to a person responsible for managing or looking after another person's property. And God has entrusted us with some things. And by the way, there's some people who have a whole lot more than a lot of us have. That is, unless some of you here have 3 mansions and boats and all that stuff, and you just haven't told us about it, so we haven't been able to ask you for more tithes and offering. But there's some people with a lot of stuff. And they don't even believe in God. They don't serve the Lord. They don't worship him. But we can't get away with that. Because if you know God, you are called to be a good steward over what you have, and be a good steward as a follower of Christ in helping others. See, they don't know any better, but we know better. Nevertheless, this is not because you're just one of those people who, just struggles with things. But you're a person who knows God, and you should also know that he is a God of protection who will keep you. Trust in him. And remind yourself, the verse here, Psalm 121:5, the Lord is your shade on your right hand. There's something about that phrase, that sentence that I like, and we'll talk more about it in the next message about the Lord being your shade. But here's the third and final thought. Be an orderly steward. I was thinking about this as I looked at the text and trying to think of a third point here to be made, and the word orderly came to me. And it came to me because in my years, and I'm sure in some of your years, I met a lot of disorderly people. There are some people who that is just their makeup. They're just disorderly. Young, old, middle-aged. And so their lives are disorderly. They just have a problem organizing anything. And again, the title of the message is Help. If you need help getting things organized, then get help. But the sense is we can allow our lives to become dysfunctional. We can allow our lives to become disorderly, to lack order. And it can be difficult. When your children are young and you're a disorderly person, then it's hard to get them together. I see some of y'all with those little kids that are running all over the place, and you're saying, hey, where's your mom and your dad? You should be not running and be over there. And they're like, Pastor, you don't understand. My parents are disorderly. I can do what I want. You know, I remember I was here over the years and some kid was writing on a wall. Hey, what are you doing? Pastor, this is what I do. I'm an artist. You know, hey, kid, where's your mom and dad? They don't stop me. There's writing on the walls at home. You know, some of us are disorderly. The way we raise our children is disorderly. The way we handle our marriages is disorderly. The way we walk as Christians is disorderly. But there's got to be some order. And in order to be orderly, it requires work. Get your priorities in order. God first. God first. Yeah, you got to trust in Him. You got to look to Him. And I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that because I'm the age that I am now from high school, middle school. Remember when there was middle school? They don't have middle school now, do they? Junior high? Junior high? Yeah. Sermon's over. That's it. No, I'm sorry. It was junior high. And then, you know, when middle school came along, I'm like, what is that, right? But I was a follower of Christ. I'm talking about Jesus in elementary school. Thank God. You know, give my mother a lot of credit for that. But there are people who understand that God has to be first. You can't just say that just because you're in church. You can't say that because you're on the worship team or you're a Sunday school teacher or you're taking care of kids in a nursery. God's first in my life. Is He really? Are you living that way? Here's one. You second. Wait a minute. How's that work? Well, if you're putting God first, then there's a sense in which you are prioritizing yourself as well. Because if God is first, it definitely takes care of who you are. Family third. Children, spouses, or that significant other. Maybe you're dating somebody. They have to be third. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not prioritizing your walk in the Lord, it's kind of hard to help somebody else. If you're a mess, you're going to give some messy help. If you're not together, then the help you offer ain't going to be together. And then fourth is other brothers and sisters in Christ that you can help. It's great to be a kind and charitable person. Just make sure that your charity is experienced by your spouse and your children first. In ministry over the years, I've known some guys, had lunch with them. They're pastors and preachers and evangelists and all of that stuff. And they talk about what they've done and how they've done this for the church, how they helped this person, all this charity and all that stuff. And then you ask about their family. Well, God is first and helping other people first. Well, you got a problem, brother. If you're not making your family a priority for ministry, then you've gotten off somewhere. It's kind of hard to help somebody else when your life is a mess. Trust in the Lord. That's what the psalmist is talking about. The Lord is your help. And so he says in Psalm 121, verse 5, the Lord is your keeper. That's good. He keeps me. Because I know I've slipped and gotten off at times. I know I've gotten off track. I know there's things that I thought, this is coming from the Lord. Only to find out later, that must have came from hell. That didn't turn out good. He's the one who will keep you. And he's your shade. It was hot yesterday. We had to go out, had to go get the car out of the shop and things like that. It was hot. And the thing that gave relief was shade. And the air conditioner in the car. The Lord is that. He's your relief. He's your shade. And then it says he's your right hand. I know there may be some left-handed people out there. So the meaning is your primary dominant hand that helps you. God will be that in your life. Help. We all need it, and I know there's some of us that have so much pride that we think we will never need it. Some of us are so arrogant that we don't want anybody to know we need it. But I got to tell you, there's going to be a time that you're going to realize that you need help, and that help can only come from the Lord. That's where we put our focus. That's where the emphasis is. Help. Sometimes it's just like tying a shoe of your daughter. Not real urgent, but you got to do it. And other times it's a call with an exclamation point. Lord, help me. I think what's most significant is the fact that if you need the help, God is more than glad to give it, isn't he? Amen. God bless.